Welcome to ILTV's Israel Weekly, where we discuss the latest in Israel's geopolitical developments. I'm Aaron Porras, and our top stories today are increased security measures added in Jerusalem while Prime Minister Netanyahu heads to the United States. My guests today include President and Chair of the New Israel Fund, Talia Sasson, Dr. Martin Sherman, the founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Eran Nissan, project coordinator for Peace Now, and Dr. Mordechai Kedar, expert on the Middle East at the Begin Sadat Center of Bar-Ilan University. Thank you all very much for coming in today, by the way. All right, now, so for our first topic, we go to Jerusalem, where IDF forces have just completed erecting a guard tower at the Damascus Gate in the Muslim quarter. It's now the fourth guard position at the gate, but while Israeli officials point to the many security reasons that necessitate the tower, Muslims see the new station as another sign of oppression.
We know that here there are going to be terrorist attacks, and we know there are going to be future terrorist attacks. Whatever amount of security is necessary needs to be implemented here.
It's a military point to restrict the movement of Palestinians in their own city, and it completes, or it is part of a whole system of checkpoints that is built and designed strictly to prosecute, to slow down, and create an inhabitable environment for the Palestinians in their own city.
Now, Talia, I'm actually going to start with you. Do you agree more with the need for these kinds of guard towers, or the fact that maybe they're more political than anything else?
First of all, I don't know. I'm not an expert of security, and one thing I know that in Damascus Gate there were a lot of terrorist activity. So on one hand, you could accept that as a security need. On the other hand, you need to be suspicious always, whether this is because of political reasons.
Suspicious of us.
So I would say that in Jerusalem, any tension lead to the next tension. Terrorist activity leads to the bigger, stronger measures that the IDF has to take, and then it causes tension and more pressure one side to the other, and it's escalating. You know, you don't know where it ends.
And then how would you answer it?
I would join Talia with, first of all, we're not experts on security, but what we can say is that we need to try to not destabilize this very tense area. And you asked if this is political. In Jerusalem, everything is political. The culture, the security, the public transportation is political. So you have a political aspect of this move, but we need to refrain from destabilizing even more.
Dr. Kedar, you disagree?
Well, in order to answer this question, you have to understand what the Nablus Gate means. This place, because of the form, the place, and the fact that this is the busiest gate of the whole old city, it became a hub of activity of Salafists. I personally was there, I saw them, I received from them books and pamphlets. This became a hub or center for activity of Salafists in general. And by the way, some of them are Turks who are infiltrating Jerusalem in the recent, let's say, year and a half, and changed the whole balance between the Islamic movement, the Waqf, and the local people. The Turks actually spend millions of dollars, euro, or whatever, in order to grab the identification of the people to themselves, to the Turks, to Erdogan. So this is why, in my view, is the reason why this place in particular got this tower, in order to monitor. Now, don't forget that according to Islam, we Jews should live under the mercy of Islam as dhimmis. We don't have a right to a state. We don't have a right to a sovereignty. We don't have a right to anything.
Well, but again, are the
and
other
objection,
gates not popular?
and the objection
do
of the
not
Muslims
necessitate a watchtower?
No, and the objection of the Muslims comes exactly from this inability of Muslims to see Jews sovereign, independent, and have a state.
Our friends from the left here talked about stabilizing the situation in Jerusalem. I've got a revolutionary idea. Suppose Arabs stop stabbing Jews. that might go a long way to stabilizing the situation.
This is classic boundary. Instead of speaking of what Israel can do to secure itself, you're talking about what the Arabs need to stop doing
every time Israel
Jerusalem.
does something to secure itself, be careful of not destabilizing. The same with the metal detectors.
Exactly, it's the same with the metal
the metal
detectors.
detectors should have been left in place. They should have been left in place, and the Israeli authority imposed on the visitors to the
From
Temple
a
Mount.
security
And that's-
standpoint, it was a mistake.
It was not a
said
mistake. It was a mistake. It was a mistake to remove them. And the same thing here. Heaven forfend, the Jews actually take measures to protect themselves. What an absurd idea!
I'm
what
not
an
coming
absurd
out
idea!
against security measures.
You are.
No,
Yes,
no,
you are.
I
You're
said-
just paying lip service.
No,
You're just paying
no,
lip service
no,
to
no, no.
security measures.
If-
Because whenever you take,
35
whenever you move away
Say
from the general principle of the general
Of Jewish
principle
lives worth
to
more
specific
than
measures.
non-Jewish lives.
Sorry.
You say it. You say Jewish lives worth more than
I'm saying
non-Jewish lives.
that Israel is responsible for protection of its own citizens before it's responsible
This
for
is-
protection of non-citizens, and
let her
everywhere else,
respond.
and every country as well. Not only Israel.
We agree that Israel has a right to protect itself.
No,
We
you
are the-
don't. You only in
Yes,
theory agree.
No,
You're
no.
only in theory.
so,
You're only in theory.
Sasson.
Because whenever
Sasson, yes.
Yes, well, I see this discussion, and I think that, of course, everyone that sits here around the table think that Israel has the right to protect itself and to secure its people.
some in theory and others in practice.
And let me speak, please. And I think that to solve the problem in Jerusalem, we have to solve it in a big picture and not in a tiny one. It's not only now a new place for policemen to stand there. It's not this. The problem that we have to solve is what will happen with Jerusalem. And as long as this situation continues, it's deteriorating, escalating, and nothing good is going to come
but
out of it.
in what way now does, putting in a watchtower escalate violence? Because ideally it should be doing the opposite.
Exactly.
Of course, it should be doing the opposite.
It should be, but
it's not. It's not
you don't
because
know. But this issue, for itself, cause tensions. Because there are
Why should it cause
Palestinians.
tensions?
Why should
the
it?
heck?
If they don't
And
legitimize,
everywhere in the world, everywhere in the world, there are security measures. Why the heck Muslims cannot be detected by something?
But the fact is that it is.
No, it is.
So
It is.
what
It
do
is.
you-
It is.
What
And
do
that
you
is.
do
And
with
that
it?
is. And that is.
Why can't they?
And that is
You know
the
what? I'll tell
bigotry.
you why.
That
Where
is
are the
that's the
tensions?
bigotry of the Israeli left. The bigotry of low expectations, because they think it's okay if the Palestinians do it. They might.
Nobody.
It's not a justification for the Palestinians. It's just a fact.
So what we should do?
Why
So
are
what we
they
should do?
incapable
Not take
of
security
going to
measures.
the
It's really.
security
Nobody says that. Nobody
Yes, you are saying that.
No,
Hold on.
I'm saying
Wait,
that
Martin,
to have
it's very-
security, we have to achieve an agreement with Palestinians.
Oh, gee, what a good
This is
idea.
the
How come we
only
didn't think of that
thing
before?
Yes.
What a
solves
good
the problem.
idea.
Yes.
Let's have an agreement with the
You're
Palestinians.
ridiculing macro politics.
I'm not.
in favor of little.
I'm ridiculing
interim,
ridiculous macro politics.
So if I'm to take everything that I've heard, then we need to come to an agreement with the Palestinians in
Yes.
order to come to a safe, to a safe understanding in Jerusalem. However, in the interim, when there is no agreement, what should Israel's option be if not security measures like
Security
these?
measures are part of what Israel can do and
Should
does
do.
and should do. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Israel
And-
need
and
to
of the-
protect their citizens, but we need to put it in a context. And if we're gonna put a new security guard outpost in the Damascus Gate, we need to put it in a context.
What context would that be?
A negotiation.
Oh, we've done that. How much more do you want to negotiate?
No. Where?
We could always set up a mini Gaza. We could always set up a mini Gaza. We could always
Because
set
in
up-
Camp David we didn't.
We can set up a mini Gaza, mortar range from the Knesset.
Nobody
What could
respects
possibly
you
go
the
wrong?
right to talk. That's
Martin,
amazing.
The problem is different. The problem is different here. Because in Jerusalem particularly, there is an organization supported by the New Israel Fund named Ir Amim. Ir Amim calls to divide the city to Israeli and Palestinian, whatever, city. As long as those Arabs, Muslims, see this organization, they are encouraged.
Exactly.
And this is why they bring violence.
This is, of course, ridiculous.
Means all those
This is ridiculous. This is
the peace industry
a
actually
false
perpetuates the war.
argument.
Well, let's get a response from the New
It's
Israel
untrue.
Fund.
Industry which you
It's
fund.
only because you
Dr.
want
cannot
to
admit,
find
because you
a
take
reason
a
to
very
attack
big
New
step.
Israel
Dr.
Fund. This is the only reason why
Hold
you
on,
say that.
I'd like to
This
respond.
industry is a moneymaker
Let
for
me-
all those
let's
who
allow-
work for
This
it.
is ridiculous.
Yes.
Let's allow her to
yes,
respond, and then we have to
I can
move
tell
on.
you the
Let's
data.
allow her a
Ridiculous.
response, and then we have
And
to move on.
untrue.
Open the data.
Sorry?
Open the data.
Would
How
you
much
like
do
to
you
respond
get?
before we move on?
Yeah, it's untrue what he said. He just tried to find an argument
All
to
these
attack New
organizations
Israel
hold
Fund
on for
because
money.
New Israel Fund is the major organization that opposed this government policy about the occupation and the continuation
What
of the
occupation?
settlement in the West Bank.
right.
This is the reason, the only reason. That's all.
What occupation?
And nothing
Military
true in
control
that.
on 3 million Palestinians in the West Bank for the last
All right,
50
well,
years.
unfortunately,
Because
gentlemen,
also a military
gentlemen,
control
unfortunately,
of Tel
I
Aviv.
must.
What do you want?
No, when
I
you
need
say
to move on to our next topic.
sure.
I apologize. So on to our next topic. After undergoing hours of questioning by the Israeli police, Prime Minister Netanyahu is getting ready for a round of meetings and speeches in the United States, where he's scheduled to visit both the White House and AIPAC's annual policy conference.
אני חושב שזו נסיעה מאוד חשובה, ואני אפגש עם ידיד גדול של ישראל וידיד גדול אישי שלי, נשיא ארצות הברית דונלד טראמפ. אני אודה לו קודם כל על ההחלטה ההיסטורית להעביר את שגרירות ארצות הברית לישראל ביום העצמאות, מתנה גדולה מאוד למדינה שלנו. ואני הולך לדון איתו על שורה של נושאים, אבל בראשם איראן. התוקפנות שלה, השאיפות הגרעיניות שלה, הפעולות האגרסיביות שלה במזרח התיכון בכלל ובגבולנו ממש, בכל גבולותינו.
All right, so first, more of a securities question, and I'll start with you, Dr. Sherman. Actually, Netanyahu just said that he wants to deal with Iran, but is the United States in a position to help us with Iran right now? You know, going up against Russia and Iran.
Well, the truth of the matter is I'm a bit pessimistic. You know, the United States has just extricated itself from 2 ground wars in Asia, actually hasn't quite extricated from both of them. And I think that they would be very, very wary before committing large forces to some sort of combat here. But again, what's happening on the northern border is the result of 2 failed policies. The first failed policy was in 2006, where the Olmert government completely mismanaged the Second Lebanon War and left Hezbollah intact as a fighting force. And the second failed policy was that of Obama, who is basically what he's done is enriched, entrenched, and empowered the current regime. And without the nuclear agreement in 2015, I'm quite sure that Iran wouldn't have the resolve or all the resources to do what it's doing now.
Now, how might they be impacted by Kushner's loss of clearance and any of the other kind of major changes that have occurred in the region?
I'm not sure that I can give you an authoritative answer to that. I'm not sure what influence Kushner had before. But the point is that a very, very dangerous situation is brewing. I wrote a column on this Friday calling for Israeli massive prevention, because I don't think Israel can deter the other side. They cannot persuade them not to use their abilities. They have to prevent or eradicate the abilities that they have. And I think the example that I gave in the column was compare the results, the triumph of 1967 with the trauma of 1973. In 1967, when we preempted, and in 1973, where we tried to deter them and failed. And I think Israel cannot allow, unless you believe that the Hezbollah are amassing over 100,000 rockets just for show, one day they're going to use them.
So
and the question is, are we going to let them choose the time?
Well, it looks like you have a different opinion of what Israeli policy should be at the moment. Yeah.
First of all, it depends where we are talking about. If we are talking about Palestinians, the policy of the government of Israel is totally wrong, in my opinion. Settlements shouldn't be spread as they are, and Israel should make the right steps to leave the West Bank with settlements. I'm not speaking about soldiers, because I won't evacuate any soldier before a peace agreement between Israel and Palestine. But when he talked, Dr. Chairman, about the north border of Israel, the Hezbollah, the Iranian, and so on. So I believe that you know, a few weeks ago, almost there was a war between Israel, Hezbollah, Iran, and Syria. And I'm very much afraid that it might happen. And I don't think that if those, just a minute, wait. If our enemies, and they are real enemies, the Hezbollah and Iran, that has a lot of weapons against Israel, this is not a reason, in my opinion, to open an attack on them by Israel, because then we should make wars all around us with our neighbors that they have a lot of weapons. Some of it is against Israel. I think that this is not a good reason to start.
All right, so let's move our focus a little bit now back to AIPAC and the upcoming meeting that Netanyahu has with American leaders in the United States. Are the current Netanyahu policies going to impact support for Israel? Because right now that's seeming to be split more and more these days upon party lines in the United States.
So when you talk about support, we need to talk on two things. First of all, the support of the administration, which Netanyahu has. Netanyahu, as I see it, is an illegitimate leader, a corrupt leader, is going to be indicted.
That ran away.
Yeah, that ran away out of the country. Yeah, so try to.
Last Friday.
So you believe this trip, I mean, is him running from investigation?
I think part of it plays for Netanyahu. But when we talk about support, wait.
2 years ago.
No. I'm talking about 3 days ago when when they tried to reschedule the investigations, the testimonies on Friday. They wanted to postpone it 3 weeks. So Netanyahu former advisors who were in jail could be released so they can collaborate between them. But back to your question, to answer your question, when we talk about support from the United States, we're talking about support of the American jury. And we're talking about the support from the administration. Now, from the administration, Netanyahu and his right-wing, nationalistic, borderline, I would say, jingoistic government has support of the Trump administration. But from the Jewish voice, the Jewish communities, you can see in the last decade, there is a split, a schism between Israel government policies and the sentiments of Jewish Americans. The Jewish Americans are in support of the two-state solution. They object to annexation and they object to settlement expansion.
They are for strength and democracy in Israel, and not against
against the monopoly of the ultra-Orthodox parties leading Israel.
So how is Netanyahu supposed to both?
You know, so outrageous. I mean, really, why would anyone who professes to liberal values support the establishment of yet another homophobic, misogynistic, Muslim-majority tyranny on the fringes of Tel Aviv?
On the meantime,
why?
Dr. Sherman, on the meantime,
why would they do
around
that?
this table, your allies, or in the Israeli politics, your allies for annexation come from a misogynistic, homophobic, ultra-Orthodox party.
And the situation in Gaza.
Bezalel Smotrich with his plan to annex.
The streets are washed with sewage in Gaza. The people
by Trump.
So we forgot that 10 days ago, the Prime Minister of Israel lied to the public talking about annexation, and then the Trump administration.
Excuse me. You're being sidetracked by gossip and by
press release from the White House.
These are facts. These are not an
what has that got to do with anything, whether it's a good idea or not a good idea to set up this homophobic, misogynistic, Muslim-majority
tyranny? If he's trying to court United States Jewry support at AIPAC,
you don't court the support by adopting the ridiculous positions. You
that's what an elected official would do.
You change their opinion.
Ridiculous positions.
Yes,
two states.
Of course. What does this have to happen?
So the formal position of the international community.
A ridiculous position. A ridiculous position, and a proven failure for quarter of a century.
The UN, the Arab League.
Yes, the Arab League. The Arab League. What a forum.
Let's get back to the subject, to Iran and Trump. Look, I believe that Trump's heart is with Israel vis-a-vis Iran, no doubt. The problem is that Trump has some more problems. North Korea, Ukraine, and domestic issues also.
Russian
of course, definitely he has problems. And I believe that he's split. His attention, his time, his resources are split between all these things. We see only Iran, and for a good reason. But he sees many more problems which he has to deal with. This is why I think that as much as Trump will sympathize with Netanyahu's plight to help vis-a-vis Iran, he means Trump has some more problems to deal with. Right. So maybe Iran is not on the top of the priorities. I believe that North Korea is much higher on his priority scale, especially when the South Koreans start now some kind of a rendezvous with the North Koreans.
The question, I believe, that I quite agree with Mordechai Dar on this topic. On this topic, well, don't exaggerate.
Not get carried away.
But the question is whether President Trump, is going to talk with Netanyahu about the big deal between Israel and Palestine. And this is, in my opinion, the main question. I believe that Netanyahu is going there to talk about this. He tells us it's about Iran, but I agree with Mordechai Dar. He has no time for the Iran issue. He wants to bring a big deal between Israel and Palestine. And the question is what Netanyahu is going to say to him, because there is a demand from Israel to withdraw from large part of the West Bank.
Who demands?
And I would add just
we're going to doing our final words at this point, so go ahead.
Okay, so on a quick note, we need to remember that when we talk about the big deal, we don't have yet an American embassy in Jerusalem. So maybe, finally, President Trump is going to put the moving of the embassy in a context of negotiations.
And he said Israel will have to pay for that.
Exactly. So he would say, we're planning to move the embassy on May 15th, in the Israeli Independence Day, but we're not going to do it if you're not set up an international summit or stop building in the settlements.
Put some sort of incentive on
We've done all that before.
To put it in a context of quid pro quo.
Oh, really?
All right, so final words, Dr.
Well, you know, I was just listening to Talia talking before about her plan for the West Bank, about pulling out the civilians and leaving the army. That's South Lebanon. So basically, what the left is exactly. So I'm saying what she said. We'll pull out the settlements and leave the army there. That's to turn the whole of the West Bank into a giant South Lebanon. What could possibly go wrong?
All right. Well, on that note, unfortunately, we have to end the show. So that's our time today for ILTV's Israel Weekly. I'd like again to thank our guests for coming in, very generous with your time, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. Remember to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras, and we'll see you next week.